Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Welcome back to episode 77 of the Locker Room Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Yavinsky. We got Ryan Rodriguez with us today, per usual. And today, LRP Summer continues with another great episode and another great guest. So let's just jump straight in and introduce him. He's currently a news anchor on NBC4, but spent 21 years at CNN in Atlanta and 14 years in local DC news. Please welcome Leon Harris.
Let's go. Hey, listen, you're putting pressure on me now to say this is a great guest before we even get started, okay? We'll talk about that after it's over.
Leon, we just want to say thank you again for taking time out of your day to be on this episode. So first question I want to ask you, very simple, just what made you want to get into news?
Yeah, I didn't, to be perfectly honest with you. I have probably one of the craziest entrees into this because I didn't start out trying to get into news. I just wanted to get into television. I loved the equipment. I loved the magic that happens when something happens anywhere else and it winds up in your living room. And so even as a kid, I would sneak downstairs and put a blanket over the television and sit there and watch it at 2:00 in the morning until my mother came down and kicked my butt. And I just loved the magic that happened inside this screen. And I always wanted to figure out how to make that happen. And so I went to college at Ohio University because I went down there to visit my sister and found out that they had 7 radio stations on campus and 1 TV station and 2 newspapers. And I was like, whoa, it blew me away. So I got a chance to work immediately on the radio and then the television and stuff. And then I got an internship at CNN when they had just gotten started on the air. And I went down there as a researcher and then worked on camera for a couple of years, did some editing for a while. And it was crazy. And then I got into this department called satellites and circuits. And so eventually I became the assistant director of this department where I was in charge of that magic that happens, where anything that happened in the world, my job was to bring the video back to Atlanta to get it on the air. And I love doing that. And believe it or not, I was going to leave the company to go someplace else. And the head guy at CNN said, no, we don't want you to leave. You have a great voice. You're very smart. Have you ever thought about going on the air? And that's when it happened. I never thought about being in the business as a journalist. But since I had been there that long inside, I'd seen how everything works. I decided, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And, here I am almost 30 years later.
Story, I must say. So when we first started our podcast, I think back in April 2020, we were definitely very nervous and we were definitely very new at this. When you first started...
Hey, listen, you'd be crazy if you weren't nervous, okay?
When you first started news, how did it get easier over time? How were you able to, maybe cope with nerves and stuff like that?
You know what? That's a good question, Ryan. No one's ever asked me that question, and it's a very important point. The most important thing is repetition. Repetition. Getting as many at-bats as you possibly can. That's the thing that really makes the difference. I was very fortunate that when they started me at CNN, they put me on overnights. And at that time, there was no other channel that was on 24 hours. And getting on overnight, and they had me doing cut-ins at the top and bottom of every hour. And I did it over and over and over again. And in between those times when I was on the air during the day, I'll tell you this, I don't think I told anybody else about this. What I did was I would go home and I would take extra scripts from the station and I would go into my bathroom and read them into the mirror and try to read them without looking like and sounding like I was reading them. I would record myself. I had a tape recorder and I had a handful of scripts, and I kept doing it over and over again until I felt like I was comfortable and I wanted to sound and look as much like I'm just talking to you instead of that I was reading something to you. And that only happened because I kept doing it over and over and over again. And so there were days, man, where instead of going to hang out with my boys and playing basketball or, trying to take some lady out on a $10 date, I was at home reading my scripts in the mirror. And I got better and better at it at the station. And CNN covered everything all the time and everything live. And so sometimes when there was something that broke, breaking news, like what we're seeing today with the this bomb threat at the Capitol, I would have to sit there and make it up as I went along and try to think my way through delivering a story. And so the only reason why it worked out for me was because I was in a place and I forced myself at home to do it over and over and over again. And you're finding it out yourself. The first couple of times out, maybe a little shaky, but you do it over and over, you get better. Also, last point, you do it over and over again, but you check it and listen to it after you do it. You listen to yourself, you watch yourself, and you can see what you need to tweak and what you don't. So I would highly encourage you to keep that up as well.
So how long did that process take? You said doing it over and over again and reading the alternate scripts. How long did that process take?
I was very lucky, Colin. It didn't take me as long, and I'll tell you why in a sec. But I would say probably within about a couple of weeks to a month, I got comfortable. I stopped getting sweaty after about a month. But I have one thing in my background, and you guys are about to go off. You guys are heading to college, and this is one thing I encourage people to do all the time after the experience I had. I was on the speech and debate team in college. Didn't want to do it, but I tore up my knee trying out for the football team, and got suckered into doing this debate, this interpretive reading thing on the speech team, and competed, got to be pretty good at that. In fact, we were 4th in the nation that year, the year I left. But what I did was they would give us we would have come up with 5 minutes worth of material from some book, maybe John Steinbeck or even Shakespeare. And then you had to deliver it as if it was your idea to say it, not read it, right? So I kind of translated that experience to taking the scripts into my bathroom experience. And that really helped out. And so that worked out for me because I tried something that I never thought I would like or do in college. And it turned out to be something that opened up the entire world to me. So I encourage you guys, when you go off, man, try anything that looks interesting. You never know when you might need it. Put it in the bag, man. You never know when it might come out and come in handy.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Because Prep is now trying to help us get used to college interviews, and I think that this podcast has definitely helped with that. Mm-hmm. So we're getting to see the other side of an interview. And so with interviews, who's been have you had one person in particular oh, I really like interviewing so and so? Or
you mean someone I have not interviewed before, or someone I already have?
Someone you already have.
Man, that's a tough one because there's so many. One that was really cool, and I wish we could have gone on for an hour and they wouldn't let me, was Will Smith.
Oh.
Yeah, he had just gotten his Oscar for the Ali movie, and that one was really cool. I have to say, I had a lot of fun with him, and it was great it was one of the few times I got a chance to interview somebody who was on my playlist. Somebody who I thought was cool outside of work. But there was another guy, and this is an obscure thing, and I still think this was the most fascinating interview I'd ever done in my life. And this includes presidents. I've interviewed Carter and Ford. This includes, actors, actresses, politicians of all walks. There was this one doctor who was a psychiatrist who had this special. He's got this book that came out at the time about birth order and how your birth order affects your entire life. And it turned out, man, it blew my mind, and it turned out it was absolutely true. During the commercial break, before we got on the air, he says, "Oh, Leon, obviously you're a firstborn, but you're not a firstborn. I'm betting you have an older sister or something." I was like, how could you tell that in 2 minutes? And he goes, "Well, I can tell because of the way that you're interacting with your producer, who's a woman, and the way you're interacting with your co-anchor, who's a woman. And I'm looking at your pants. You got a crease in your pants, and your shoes are shine, which is what usually happens with firstborns because parents have more time with them and they impose more rules and order on them." And then he looked at my co-anchor and goes, "Oh, you're definitely the firstborn, I can tell. And there's no question about it." And we're like, "How did you know that?" And he ticks off all these things. He goes around the room and he can look at every single person and tell immediately almost what their birth order was. And I thought that was so fascinating. He goes, this is the kind of thing you need to know because this can help you order your life and help other people and help you figure out the rest of your life. Help you pick out who it is you're going to marry, who it is you're going to hang around, who you're going to have as friends. Maybe even help you pick out which professors you want to go to because you can tell by their traits which one might jive better with yours. And I was like, I never thought about stuff like that before. That's one of the beauties of a job like this, man. You can go into work and never know what you're going to have to do. And you walk away with something like that blows your way for the rest of your life, man.
Wow.
That cool?
That's insane.
I'll tell you what, go check this out in your own families too. He said, babies of the family, you can always tell because they're the ones who are always doing something that look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. They're the ones who go on to be actors, actresses. They're the ones that go on to be defense attorneys. So the ones who go on to be prosecutors are usually the firstborn. The ones going to be corporate lawyers, they're usually firstborn or middleborn. But the defense lawyers are always going to be your babies. Accountants are usually firstborns in the family. It was like, are you kidding? Go through every single career field and tell you which one is more likely to be first or last born in their family.
That is insane. Oh my God.
I know, man.
Oh my God. So we talked about how you've interviewed.
Okay, stop right there. Hang on, stop right there. Since I got the two of you, okay, do you guys know what it is you're going to major in when you get to college?
Ryan?
Been thinking of sports management or like going in business field.
Okay, hold up. You froze up a second. Say it again.
Thinking about maybe going to like into business or maybe.
Okay.
Sports management.
Okay, Colin.
So then I'm thinking about going into like either like broadcast journalism or just something in the communications field.
Okay, interesting. So, but that's a tough call here. I would guess, Colin, are you firstborn?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Ryan, I don't know if I'd say you're firstborn because you're a hybrid here with the business and with the sports management. Sports management strikes me as a little more of a lastborn. Are you a middleborn?
Firstborn.
You say again?
Firstborn.
You're firstborn. Okay. All right. So you threw me on that one. Colin nailed you completely.
Oh, 100%. So when you're covering a story, this is just something I'm wondering, is there something that like you look for in stories? Like what makes something like stand out to you and from any other story?
Well, what stands out to me in any story is, first of all, why is it important for me to tell you the story? Is it something that's worth your time and your attention? And if it is, what do I need to do to grab you and bring you in and make you sit around for an extra second and listen? And to do that, I have to look at every single story and find what's human in it. Find what it is and find what it is that would, I don't know, make you want to tell this story to either your mother, your best friend, or your son or daughter. Okay. And usually what makes it possible or makes you want to tell those stories is you've got to find how this story affects people. You almost never, even if it's a story that, I don't know, it could be something about the space station. It might be a piece of equipment, but there's something about it that is that has a human thing. What's going on with the people inside of it? What's being done inside there that's going to make life different down here? What does that mean to our link with the rest of the universe? I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, sound kind of crazy, but it really doesn't matter if you can't say why it affects people or what human element is involved with that story. It's the reason why the story in Afghanistan is so heartbreaking, because every single person on the planet, I don't care what your political background is, I don't care what your racial background is, I don't care what your gender background is, there's something about seeing those images that touches you and just grabs you by the stomach, man, and just yanks you. And there's a reason for that. It's because you see those people. You don't see that plane. You don't see the guns. you see the people, you know? So that's the thing that that I think is the most important thing with every story. And in my mind, I try to imagine who I'm talking to when I tell that story. Is this a story I'm telling to my mom? If it's a story about the stock market, if it's a story about home prices, if it's a story about wildfires, am I telling that to my mom? And because I would tell it in a different way. Am I telling this to one of my homeboys that I went to college with? I talk about it in another way and if I'm telling the story to my son, you know, when he's 10 years old or 5 years old, what is it I'm telling him and how am I telling him that story? That's kind of what's rolling in the back of my mind every single time I'm telling a story on the air.
A story.
Lost your mic again, Ryan.
Ryan, is all good? Are you good or?
You guys froze up for a little bit.
There you
Sorry
go.
Sorry for the internet issues. So when you cover a story, how do you like try to remain unbiased?
Because as a real journalist, and I'll say a real journalist, not to cast aspersions on people who on my other colleagues, every single day the mission is to get the best reportable version of the truth. I have a conscience, and if I go to bed, if I come home, if I leave work knowing that, you know, what I did was something that may have made somebody think that I was not being fair, that would bug me. That would bother me. We are supposed to be, you know, in either we're supposed to be either a mirror, telescope, or a microscope every single day. The devices don't change the story. We put up a mirror to the rest of the country, to you, to show you what's going on, to show you yourself. We don't get in the way. We just tell you that we show you the picture. If we are a microscope, we look into the details of what happened today, and the details are details, and facts are facts, and we should be able to report you those facts. And a telescope is, if we're telling you what we're seeing coming down the road, something we see that is happening in the future that could be very important, that should be a fact out there. That shouldn't be an opinion. And so that's kind of like what I see our role as being. And I've been accused of being biased in one way or the other. Sometimes it was completely unfair. For instance, when I was at CNN, man, back in the day, the Palestinian and Israeli conflict was so ridiculous, and I'll say that word, it was so ridiculously heated that we had to actually have a timer on our interviews because we couldn't give one side a second more than we gave the other side. And if we did, they would rain holy hell on us by protests and emails and phone calls. They'd flood our switchboard because Leon Harris gave the Israeli ambassador 5 seconds more than he gave the Palestinian representative. It was that heated. It was that real.
Wow.
So we had timers to make sure that nobody could ever accuse us of playing one side more than the other. And that's sort of like how I was born in this business. So I saw how important it was. I remember getting phone calls from people who thought if I mispronounced a name, I was doing it out of disrespect. And that was something that was heated. Sometimes it would go all the way up to the top of the chain at my company, and they would come to me and say, listen, straighten this out. I mean, it's that kind of thing does happen, and it's not fun. It's not comfortable. So for me, even if I get it wrong, I'm happy to respond to anybody who thinks I haven't been fair. And I've done that hundreds of times where people have emailed me or called me to say they didn't like an interview I did, or they didn't like a story, the way I delivered a story, because it seemed like I was trying to, you know, wink and nod or something like that, or I was trying to send some sort of message. And I never try to do that. If I'm going to send a message, I'll be pretty blatant about it. If you've ever watched me, you'll know that. But it's, for me, man, it's personally and professionally, it's very important for me to try to play it straight every day.
So when you're like playing it straight, or at least this is for me and Ryan, a lot of times before we go into like a big sports game or really like any type of sports game, we have like a pregame routine. Is there like, one thing I've always wondered is like when we both go off to college or then jobs after that, do you have like a on-air routine? And if so, how has that changed over time?
No, my My pre-on-air routine is the same every day. Reading as much as I possibly can about what's going on today. Conferring with my producers about what's going to be in our programs, what we should be preparing for, that might happen today, things that are on the calendar that may turn into big things for the day, and of course, watching and listening to as much news as I possibly can. I have the most boring life. It's everybody thinks that this stuff is so exciting and so sexy, and it's like, nah, it's a lot of reading. I've had a lot of students who say who've asked me if they'd like to shadow me. And I was like, you're gonna be the most bored person ever because you'll be sitting here watching a dude read. That's not so much fun. But that's what it is, really, man. It's absorption of as much info, so that when something does pop off, I'm halfway prepared. And that's it. It's just preparation for what might happen. And that's been the challenge. That was the challenge from the get-go for me. Like at CNN, since we covered the entire world, it was like anything could happen. So get ready for what might happen in LA today and what might happen in Bosnia. What might happen anywhere in Africa today. Get ready for it because it could blow up on your on the screen today, and you're gonna have to sit there and ride herd on it. So it's a challenge, and I love it. It's great, man. You get an adrenaline rush, man. And there's something cool about knowing stuff that other people don't know before they know it. That kind of thing is cool to me too. You guys have the luxury, getting back to the bias thing. If you're doing sports stuff, you don't have to be biased. You can, in fact, you're supposed to be. If you're covering a particular team or a particular school or conference or whatever, you're supposed to be biased toward that stuff. So you can enjoy that. But how you would prepare for that every single day, I don't know. My approach though is just try to suck up as much info as you possibly can so that you're not surprised, and that helps you be as comfortable as possible.
So did you know that right when you first got into news, or how long did it take to kind of develop that? I need to do this. I need to read before and watch as much news as I can before going on the air.
Well, I got lucky in, again, the way I started, starting at CNN, and especially back in the day when there was no other competition. So CNN didn't try to be, one way or the other in terms of philosophy. The philosophy then was the news is the star. Well, there were no commercials where you saw the news anchors, grinning in front of the camera, nothing like that, because that place said the news is the star. So every day you went in there, back when I was working behind the cameras, even every day you went in there, the mission, the purpose of your being there was to get information. And for me, I got that by osmosis. It bled into me from being around it for so many years. I didn't go on the air until I had been there for, I think it was like 10 years. I think I'd been there for 10 years before I got my chance to go on the air. So I kind of grew up in that environment. And when you grow up in an environment like that, and you also have a fear of being embarrassed every single day, you're like, you know what? I want to be as prepared and armed as possible. Plus, I did what you guys are doing right now. There were people who were in the business for a long time ahead of me. People I call colleagues now. I sought them out and asked them for advice and talked with them to see what they thought about it and how they prepared and what their approach was. And, that's sort of like how I developed mine.
So when you mentioned sports media, you're 100% spot on. They have to be very biased, of course. Just if an example, just be if you're watching a sports game, go tune into the opposite team's radio station and see how many nice things they have to say. You're from Ohio. Did you have any? Did you root for Ohio teams growing up? And if so, do you still root for them, or is it all DC?
Hey man, look, I've been here now for over 20 years, so I will live with the Washington football team, but I will die with the Cleveland Browns. That's my joint, man. The Cleveland Browns. I'm in the wrong room now. I could show you. I have more helmets and jerseys from the Browns than I have from Washington. Hands down, not even close. Grew up with them, man, and it's one of the lessons I try to teach to my son. It's like, you stick with the team you grew up with. You guys are from around here. 20 years from now, if I bump into you somewhere on the street, I don't care if we're in, Oklahoma. If I bump into you guys in the street, you better have a keychain or a screensaver or something that says Washington somehow, some way. That's the way it's supposed to be. Real
I'll have
men.
that Maryland flag with me.
There you go, baby. I see it. I see it. You're real men stick with the teams they grew up with, man. But when I grew up, man, the Browns were good when I grew up. The Indians were not. So that's one reason why I didn't get into baseball really until I went to Atlanta and got with the Braves, and now I'm here with the Nats. I'm the season ticket holder with them, so I'm on board fully with the Nats. Cleveland's basketball team was okay, but so they didn't get me all that excited. So for me, the team at the top of the pile for me, Cleveland Browns. And this year is going to be our year. Well, never mind. Let me take that back. I don't want to jinx it. But this year, we're going to be good this year.
They're going to be good. They're going to be
good. And here's one thing I love is that for years, man, nobody talked about when no one talks about your team unless it's about a disaster or about something being bad, it breaks your heart and just tears you down. And then the one time they start saying something good about your team, man, it just completely changes your life. That's what sports is all about. That's what sports is all about.
For being a Cleveland Browns fan and hanging on, especially when they were going.
Hey, man, that's what a real fan is all about, man. No fair weather stuff here, okay?
Defense, we What does like your daily life look like? So just
my daily routine is it's only slightly skewed from most people because I work late. I don't get home from work until late. So, generally I'm up by 9:30. Got to have 2 cups of coffee. And while I'm doing that, that's when I begin my research and watching all the news I can possibly watch all the news channels, start reading the Washington Post to see what's going on. Hopefully I get all that wrapped up by 11. Then I'm in the gym for about 90 minutes. And that to me is the one corner of the day where that's all about me. And you got to have some space like that every single day. And then I'm in the office. I'm in the office by 1. And that's when I first had my first conversations with the producers about what they're working on, what's on the slate for the day. Then I'm returning phone calls, emailing, setting up stories, doing some interviews. And the first time I'm on the air is 2:30. We have a quick hit that we do during the Ellen show. And then it's just, crashing to make sure we got every single thing. I've conferred with every single writer who's writing on all the stories, making my own tweaks to stories, and then hitting a set at 4:00. And then I'm on the air essentially from 4:00 all the way through 7. And then at 7:00, we do a digital newscast on OTT, which is on an OTT platform, which is on Roku. And then I get to have lunch at 7:30. So my lunch break is 7:30. And a lot of nights I don't get a lunch break because I'll be out emceeing galas or, doing outside events that the public appearances and things like that. And then I'm back in the studio by 9:15, 9:30 to start working on the 11:00 newscast. Then we do the 11:00 newscast, and then I get to go home, and I'm usually home by about 12:15, and then we start the whole thing all over again at 9 the next morning. So it's not as much fun. It really is not. Sometimes the fun part comes in the stuff that I get to do that is supposed to be work, the public appearance stuff. There's sometimes I get to go do things with kids groups that are fantastic, and I always get charged up by that. There's sometimes I get to go get asked to go do like panel discussions, or where I end up meeting special people or people who inform me in ways I didn't expect. And then sometimes the galas are great because they feed you generally. They normally will feed you pretty good food and let you drink some wine, and then you got to go back to work. But there are days where it can be, pretty much constant activity from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock.
So you see
that's the other thing too. That's people don't understand that's kind of hard to convey. So when you get out of school or you get out of practice or whatever, you can't just sit down immediately and go to sleep. So just like that, when I get home from work, I just can't unwind and go to sleep. So I can't immediately go to sleep. So I will sit up here in my office here and I will have to watch The Daily Show, Seth Meyers, and then do some final reading in order to get my brain to slow down. And so I generally don't get to sleep until about between 2:30 and 3 o'clock every morning. And that's why that hour and a half in the gym at 11 is so important for me.
Yeah, just kind of focusing on just staying healthy.
Yeah, got to, man. It's, brain and body, they work together, man. And again, you got to have a minute or two. You'll find this out as you get to be it. You have more adult stuff on top of all the things you're doing on your shoulders every day. You got to have something. You got to have a mental health break. And for me, a mental health break is getting my heart rate up.
So you said you did that digital newscast. What's the difference between like the digital ones and the TV ones?
The digital one is just sort of a shortened version of what we do on the air, because when you're reaching out to a digital audience, and this is the thing that you find out, every platform, the audience is different and you got to present it in a different way. The digital audience has an attention span that's like this. And so therefore we pick different stories and we deliver them in a different way. For instance, the Roku show that we do, a lot more lighthearted. There's some heavy news in there, some important, again, because we have to have, there's got to be some importance to what we're doing. If it's not important, there's no need to tell you. But so we'll pick out a couple of serious, important stories that you need to know about. But then after that, it's the stuff that are talkers, stuff that you probably will get, somebody's going to ping you or you're going to find on Facebook somewhere, if not that day, the next day, that kind of stuff, or something you're going to find on Instagram. We try to find stuff that's talker-like stories so that we can spend as much time talking with each other about it as we do actually telling the story. We can't do that in a regular newscast. In a regular newscast, if we talk too much, then even though your attention span might be like this, we sort of like bore you and it then begins to drop. So, we got to keep it moving more on a newscast. So it's just a different style of delivering information that you would normally get in a newscast or maybe on an Instagram or a Facebook feed. But we do it in a sort of more casual way.
Yeah, just trust me about the viewer retention rate online. Our retention rate shows that 100%. So. Yeah,
that's the demon. That's sort of like the demon we battle every day is how do you sound smart and do things that are worth listening to, and not waste people's time and get people to engage and not leave, because you can do stupid stuff and have people stay. But do you really want to be that guy? Do you really want that to be what people know you for? Yeah.
Ryan, I think you're cutting out again.
You're cutting out again, Mike. Ryan, your mic's cutting out.
Maybe you have the headphones in there. I remember before we started, they were fine before that.
What? You guys hear me?
There you go.
There we go.
There we go.
That's
Okay.
good.
Hang on one second. All right. I think I'm good now.
Yeah,
So,
good.
okay. So in 2013, you had a very serious incident. And forgive me if I mispronounce this. I think it's called necrotizing pancreatitis. Is that what it's called?
Necrotizing pancreatitis.
So how was your perspective on covering events or maybe even life in general change after recovering from that?
Ooh, that's a really good question. First of all, having gone through that, and I died twice and they had to restart my heart 2 times. I can identify with and being on a ventilator. I was on a ventilator for 14 days. I can identify with what these COVID patients are going through. I know exactly what that feels like. And every single time we talk about COVID patients and ICUs and being on and ventilators and whatnot, man, I can identify with that personally. So for me, that gives me an extra charge to sort of connect if any way with the patients who are going through that. And since I also saw what my wife was going through as she was at my bedside, it again helps me to identify with the families of people who are battling these kinds of conditions. And even if it isn't COVID, it's if anybody is if any family is it has anything they're suffering through, man, it really gives me an extra sense of responsibility to connect with their humanity in telling them that story. And that's why it's I don't know, it's kind of hard sometimes because, like, for instance, some of these people who are on ventilators right now, they're on it because they didn't get the vaccine, and that vaccine's been available to them for a year. So their choices put them in that position. So as much as most people like point fingers at them and blame them, and I too, to a degree, believe that they're in a situation that's of their own making, I still see them as humans. I still understand what they're going through because I went through it. And you shouldn't have to have a life-threatening situation to make you identify with your fellow man, but it doesn't hurt. It actually can help you do that. And also because I went through that, man, I'm happy. I feel like I'm blessed every day to be up on the right side of the dirt, as they say. I'm still here, and I want to take advantage of every chance I get, man, because you never know. You never know when it could be taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're like reporting, especially with the whole COVID thing, did that make reporting on that kind of stuff harder? Or did that make it easier since you had that experience?
It makes it easier in some way. It makes it easier only in this regard, that I can identify with the families that are going through it and the patients who are suffering with it. Aside from that, it doesn't change. It doesn't really affect the way I look at things like the numbers, the data that's coming out from the CDC and the FDA, the debates about masks and stuff like that. My experience doesn't affect my thinking or my approach to those kinds of things. My journalism affects my approach to that part of the story. My personal experience connects me with the people at the hospital side of the story and the family side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, just hopefully it's just kind of a message to everyone. Please get the vaccine. It's worth it, I guess.
Well, think about this too, guys. If you are telling stories, even if they're sports stories, you're telling sports stories. If you can look in your own past, if you can look in your life or the lives of your friends of yours and find something to connect with the story that you're covering, it helps you tell the story better. It helps you even find a better angle, maybe a different angle to tell the story. And whether you're telling the story of an athlete, or you're telling the story of a program, you're telling the story of a program, and you and your family have been following this program, or you and your family have been hating this program for years, whatever it is. You can connect into that. You can tap into that to help you tell the story or find angles to tell the story, and so what that does is those people that have the same background as you, they'll go, yeah, I get it. Yeah, he gets it. He gets it. That's my guy.
That's just kind of how it goes, and you're reporting this close to Baltimore or Pittsburgh or anything like that.
There you go. There you go. And for Pittsburgh, for me, man, I've hated Pittsburgh all my life. All my life. Just because I'm a Browns fan, I've hated Pittsburgh. And my mom's family, my mom was a twin, and her twin sister moved to Pittsburgh. So our family is split right down the middle. It's boom, boom, boom. This all year long.
Oh yeah. My mom's side of the family, they're all from Pittsburgh, so especially being near Baltimore, I definitely see where you're going from.
You get it.
And as the Caps are huge rivals with the Penguins, and it's just
there you go. Yes,
oh yeah,
exactly.
It's just
everybody hates Pittsburgh.
God.
There you go. So we get together and work on a story on a television series called "Everybody Hates Pittsburgh." All right.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Leon, I just want to say again, thank you for being on this podcast. Taking time out of your busy day to answer our questions and just being a guest on the podcast. So,
well, listen, I want to congratulate you guys for actually reaching out and to have this conversation. And don't let this be the last time you do this sort of thing. Again, the thing that helped me was reaching out. You'd be surprised how many people, like me, who are professionals, would be happy to talk to you guys about whatever it is you want to talk about, as long as you're not, taking too much of their time or anything, and make clear to them that you won't, because every single one of us used to be you. Okay, we used to be you guys, and so there's something every now and then there may be some jerks out there that won't return your phone call or won't talk to you, but you'd be surprised at how many of us will, and that will help you guys no matter which direction you guys want to go.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, thank you for being on.
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Take care.
Follow our Instagram, follow our Twitter, subscribe, and yeah, it's been a Locker Room Podcast. And then
Cool.
All right, yeah.
All right, dudes, take it easy. I'm hitting the gym.
All right, yeah.